How would you describe, Howie's leadership style and just seeing all the success that he's had running that front office?
He's a perfectionist and he demands all of us to be the same. And then second would be relentlessness. He's going 100 miles an hour all the time and you have to keep up.
Welcome in to NFL Spotlight. It is the Tuesday, August 19 edition of the show. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. And since it is a Tuesday, that means we have a special Spotlight guest of the week. And today we are going to be joined by somebody from the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. He is the senior vice president of the organization, Bryce Johnston, who plays a critical role in that front office with Howie Roseman when it comes to salary cap, when it comes to contract negotiations, when it comes to roster construction, strategy, and so much more. We all know the Eagles front office is arguably the very best in the NFL, and Bryce plays a very, very big role in all of it. And his story is a cool one because he was kind of like all of us. He used to be a fan of the team. He had a website for the Philadelphia Eagles dedicated for them, a salary cap website, and that turned into a career with his favorite team. And look at him now, one of the most important members of that front office and somebody who most people, most fans probably don't know much about him, but he is a critical part of what the Eagles do and the success that they've had for so many years. So here it is, my full 35 plus minute discussion with the Eagles senior vice president, Bryce Johnston. Joining us today here on NFL Spotlight, he is entering his 10th season with the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. His title is Senior Vice President. He works closely with Howie Roseman and the rest of the Eagles' excellent front office on salary cap, roster strategy, and much more. It is Bryce Johnston. Bryce, thank you so much for doing this. How's everything going?
Hi, Ari. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I know you've had a lot of impressive people from the league, so I'm flattered to be included. But yeah, training camp is going well so far, so I'm excited to get going.
It's an honor to have you on, and it's crazy to think about. We've had so many great guests here on the show. You're the first one who's actually from the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's great to have you on, and you are somebody who is a very, very integral part of the success that the Eagles have had for the last decade plus. And I want to go through, here on NFL Spotlight, we love going through people's career paths, their journeys. How do they get to where you are today? And yours is a very, very unique one. And I'll start from the very beginning. You grew up in New Jersey. I guess the simple question is, how did your love for football even come about? Where did all of the football love come from?
Yeah, I think the area in which I grew up played a big part of that. So South Jersey, suburb of Philadelphia, you see it's very well documented how passionate our fan base is for our team. And that was the football culture that I grew up in. I think in the region, it's one of the main topics of conversation, areas of passion, and that permeates all the way down. So I grew up in that generally, and then had started playing at a young age, and was fortunate to come up through a youth program, a high school program that was very well run, a lot of community investment. So I think both angles of that contributed to starting me on this path.
Well, you grew up an Eagles fan, and of course, you work with the Eagles now. I want to ask you, we know there are fans who just love their team. They just watch on Sundays. Fans love a specific player. You were as diehard as it gets, and it was such a diehard that you created a website called eaglescap.com, which literally was everything you need to know when it came to salary cap of the Eagles and the players. You were on it. How did that come about? When did you start this? Where did that passion for the business side of football come from?
Yeah, so great question. When I was, let's say, 11, 12, 13 years old, in that range, this was the Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb era team here that was very successful year after year, but there tended to be a prominent player who would leave in free agency each offseason. Jeremiah Trotter, Troy Vincent, Hugh Douglas, this group of players. And the reasons cited publicly tended to be salary cap related. So just out of my own curiosity, and in following the team, I thought, okay, well, is there any place I can learn about this? What do the numbers look like? So I started reading online, researching, compiling my own spreadsheets, just for my own reference. And then after a few years of that, in 2005, so I would have been about 15, 16, was the famous Terrell Owens contract dispute holdout situation. So then this topic really broke into the mainstream and became, talked about on the radio and newspapers, etc. And I had this information that, to some extent, it wasn't really out there. So I compiled a pretty basic looking website that people could reference with contract numbers that were kind of dispersed online, and it was more about gathering them in one place and then put in context. So coming out of that, I ended up being invited onto the sports radio station here, and then had repeated that a few times through high school and college, and kept up with that for about 9 years until I changed what I was doing with that.
It's so cool to see somebody who grew up a fan and just starting something on his own and seeing some success come out of it. And where I wanted to ask you, like, when it comes to the salary cap, it wasn't really talked about much back in those days. Now, here in 2025, fans gobble that stuff up. Overthecap.com, the founder, Jason Fitzgerald, was on this show as well. You also became a contributor for that site eventually. But where did your love for just salary cap come from? Was there somebody you read about? Was it just a Joe Banner thing, who obviously was a very big deal? Like, where did that love for it come from?
Mhm. Well, to me, if I was going to be interested in the league and follow it, I felt like it didn't make sense to only follow part of it. I had a desire, intellectual curiosity to know as much as possible, and it became pretty apparent that it was impacting what was going on. So at the time, there were not a lot of public resources. There were websites like the one I made for individual other teams, and then this is before Twitter, before Reddit. There would be message boards where people were posting about this, and you could kind of get in these conversations with other people who are interested in the topic. I think Jason Fitzgerald came out of that as well, and then eventually, by the time I was finishing law school, Over the Cap was up and running, and it was a better, more comprehensive version of what I was doing. So I also wasn't as interested in the reporting aspect of it. I wanted to do more on strategy and ideas and theory. So that's when I reached out to Jason, told him that I wanted to shut my website down, and asked if I could contribute to his. And then that's what I started doing after school.
Over the Cap, which Jason runs, was similar to you. He started as Jets only because he was a Jets fan. Eventually became Over the Cap for all 32 teams. And as we know right now, it is one of the premier websites that we have for NFL fans to get all the financial details for every single team, every single player, and so on. Now, while all this was happening, while you were contributing for Over the Cap during this time, you also, were in law and you had a corporate law career. Did you ever think about, hey, maybe the NFL path of whatever it is could become a real thing? Or did you just think, what, law is my thing. This is more of a side job?
The NFL was always the goal. So when I was in college, uh, with my own website, this is what I had in mind for down the road. Now, I wasn't at an Ivy League type of school. I didn't have any connections in the NFL. So around that time, I my instinct was that I needed to build up more credentials and experience so that if there was an opportunity, I would be the most qualified person, or at least be in the conversation for it. So that's when I started going down the law school, law firm path, but it was more of a means to an end to get into the type of role that I have now. So that's why I was doing both things simultaneously. So while I was working at the large law firm, in my free time, I was spending a pretty substantial amount of it blogging for Jason's website, podcasting with him, whenever I had time.
Now, while you're doing this over the cap work and of course your law work as well, this is where the big opportunity comes for you, where in 2016, you get a potential internship with the Philadelphia Eagles and you make the big decision to leave what you're doing in the law world and take that internship with the Eagles. Was there any hesitation or was it like, this is my favorite team? I don't care if it's an internship. I'm doing this right now and I'm going to live out my dream.
Yeah, there wasn't any hesitation at all. Like I said, this was the goal and the plan, and the fact that this is where the opportunity was the best case scenario for that. So while I'm working at the law firm, I'm putting in all this time, writing articles in my free time, and you don't know if it's going to lead to anything or not. But if you don't do it, then it's definitely not going to lead anywhere. I can think of times where I would rent my second room in Manhattan on Airbnb. So I would have a parade of international tourists as my roommates. So I'm in laundromats at 6 a.m. or Saturday night, washing sheets and towels while writing these articles. And eventually, Jake Rosenberg, who was my former colleague here who hired me, came across one of them, and we had some exchanges related to that. And then he had reached out to Jason Fitzgerald when there was an opportunity here. So I knew, he knew who I was, and we got in touch that way. So really, it was Jason and Jake were the two main drivers of the opportunity.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you go out there and you take this position with the Eagles, the internship. What did that internship in 2016 entail? And I guess what were the biggest lessons or surprises that you learned about how an NFL front office operates behind the scenes?
Yeah, at a basic level, it was the entry level version of what I do now or what I was doing throughout the past 10 years. So the setup was you go through the whole cycle, starting training camp through the draft, like a 1 year tryout, and then see what happens from there. Um, I think when I started, I thought relative to a member of the public, I had a good understanding, but very quickly you realize that there's a lot more information that there's just no way you're going to have access to. For example, you can see charts of contract numbers on Over the Cap, but then you have access to the league's website, and then you can see the text of all the contracts, right? And the details matter. You can actually see all the information. Or as a member of the public, you can read the CBA online, but when you start, you get access to all of the actual interpretations of those rules from the league, etc. So very quickly, there's a lot of new information, and you realize what's actually going on. And then from an operational standpoint, in advance there's a scouting operation, but then actually meeting the scouts and learning about the extent of what they do or the logistics. So I was fortunate to go through this learning from Jake. And one thing he was always great about stressing is the relational aspect of the industry. I think that drives a lot of what happens, and there's not a good way to get a perspective on that, before being on the inside.
Hey guys, Ari here, and I'm here to tell you that NFL Spotlight is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook this NFL season. And we are here to tell you to get an edge on your bets. If you have not signed up for FanDuel, well, now is the right time because for new customers only, if you win your first $5 wager, you could get $300 in bonus bets. But you got to win, which is why you got to take notes when you listen to NFL Spotlight to get all the right insight on what is happening around the NFL to make sure you make the informed bets.
All right, Ari. So I want to go through a few projections that FanDuel has for some of the rookies and give your thoughts. And let's go ahead and start with the guy who went first overall in the draft in Cameron Ward, or Cam. It kind of depends on where you want to go for it and whether you listen to his mother or not. They've got Cam Ward as over under 18.5 passing touchdowns this season. Which way are you swaying?
Yeah, I'm going to go over on this one. And I think Cam Ward has been the least talked about number one overall pick quarterback in recent history. And all the word from Tennessee, we had one of their B reporters here on the show a couple of days ago, is that he has been fantastic on the field, off the field, as a leader, doing everything it takes. And this was Brian Callahan's pick. And I look back at last year, number one overall pick with Caleb Williams. He had such a mess over there with different head coaches, different play calls, all these different things. He still managed to throw 20 touchdown passes last year. So I think that Cam Ward should be able to go over 18.5 this year. I do like Calvin Ridley. I do think one of those rookie receivers that they had is going to end up stepping up over here. And Chigakakwo, the tight end who's entering the final year of his contract, is a name to watch over there.
Okay, let's move on to the running back. That was the first one off the board in the draft. Ashton Genty, 1,075.5 rushing yards. You going to be somebody who's hitting that mark?
Yeah, I mean, I love Ashton Genty. He was the best prospect probably in this draft. I think he's probably, I don't have it in front of me, but I would imagine he's the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year this season. The Raiders, Pete Carroll, are all about running the ball. That's what Chip Kelly is also. Look at what he did last year at Ohio State with 2 different running backs. They're going to lean on Ashton Genty a lot. The offensive line is a pretty good offensive line in my mind. He's going to be the guy, and as the year goes on, I think he'll only get better. So far, I'm only going with the over so far because these are 2 of my favorite prospects from this draft, and I know those teams are going to be relying pretty heavily on those guys.
Well, you can also go out there and make a bet on who you think is going to be the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And right now, the odds are saying that Ashton Genty has the best. So there you go. You're right on. But another guy that is going to be consideration for a lot of awards, because, hey, he's coming off a Heisman Trophy win, is Travis Hunter. He's going to see a little bit of the offense. He's going to be seeing a little bit of the defense. But we think he's going to get some love on offense. That's what it really feels like. You listen to our Grant Udinsky offensive coordinator for the Jaguars interview, you'll get a little bit of a feel for that. So 750.5 receiving yards over under.
Yeah, this one might surprise some people. I'm going to go with the under on this one, not because I don't think Travis Hunter is a great player. I think he's an outstanding player. I just think there's a Brian Thomas Jr., obviously, in this offense. We know there's a couple of other receivers on this team who Trevor Lawrence has publicly talked about, like a Parker Washington. I think the Travis Hunter situation, I think they're going to be using him on both sides of the ball. So how is that all going to play out? Is he actually going to be a full-time receiver? So we're really not sure exactly how he's going to be used. Granny Dinsky, who's on the show, is obviously very, very excited about him, but that is a big number, especially for a team that does have a bunch of pass catchers potentially on this team, including a clear-cut number 1 guy in Brian Thomas Jr. So I'm going to go slightly less than that for Travis Hunter this year.
Well, we're going to be going through all the bets this year. We're going to be getting you guys informed every single week here on Tuesdays. So you got to head over to FanDuel Sportsbook, sign up before the season kicks off with the number one. It's important, Ari. The number 1 sportsbook in America. You must be 21 and over, present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online, real wager money only, $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24-hour support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.
Now, I want to ask you just overall, you end up in this front office, which for years upon years has been one of the best run front offices in the NFL. And obviously it's led by Howie Roseman, the GM. How would you describe, Howie's leadership style and what you've learned from working so closely with him and just seeing all the success that he's had running that front office?
Yeah, two things I would highlight about Howie's leadership style. One, just setting a standard of excellence. He's a perfectionist, and he demands all of us to be the same. That's not to say that we are perfect, but that is the standard that we're expected to meet. So we know that he's noticing everything, and he's taking in a lot of information. And if you're not on top of your game, it will be noticed. So I think that sets the expectation. And then second would be sort of relentlessness. He's going 100 miles an hour all the time, and you have to keep up, which pushes people to stretch themselves and be on top of their game at all times. And then as far as what I've learned from him, the closer I've gotten more into, working with him, the more appreciation I have for the scope of that job and how much information and management of people goes into it. So, observing him navigate that at a championship level is something that I'm always, taking notes on and, gaining appreciation for how difficult that is, because there's not really, like no one can say exactly how to do it. You just have to kind of watch people do it, and everyone would have their own style for it. But it's fortunate to observe him do it at such a high level.
I mean, the Eagles front office, they've had so many people in that building over the years, many of whom have been promoted within the building, many who went on to become general managers and assistant general managers with other teams. And it's really a true collaboration led there by Howie Roseman. Now, particularly with you, you started off as an intern. You've been promoted several times from the internship to football administration coordinator to director of football administration to senior director of football transactions to eventually where you are today with the senior VP of the organization. I guess just when it comes to earning Howie's trust, was there a key moment where you felt like you earned the trust of Howie Roseman there in the front office?
I actually think it's important to think about trust as a very gradual process rather than a binary, you have it or you don't. I think you accumulate trust very gradually and incrementally over time. And part of that is just doing a good job consistently. Part of that is um, banking unique ideas as you go. And then part of that is saying things that you feel strongly about, even if that's counter to consensus. So I don't think there's a specific uh, point, but the way that we interact now and the trust level I believe he has in me now is different than 3 years ago, which is different than 6 years ago, which is different than 9 years ago. But it's consistency and reliability over time is really the only way to gain trust, I think.
I mean, it's so true, and it probably applies to every line of work, not just football. I mean, it just it's very, very true. And you mentioned before how once you got the job, you realize there is way more stuff that you get to see once you're inside of a front office than when you're outside of it, whether it's over the cap or as the general fan. You've said before what you see publicly is just the tip of the iceberg. What is something that fans would be surprised to know happens in a front office and the job that you do?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is the logistical coordination that goes into just the most minor transactions. So let's say we're signing a player to our 90-man roster in training camp. Minimum salary, there's not really negotiation. It's the most simple type of signing, from coordinating with the agent to booking travel to scheduling the onboarding process to physical exams, uh, equipment, video, signing the contract, getting the player with the coaches. It is a massive undertaking that involves a ton of people and oftentimes on a tight time frame. I mean, there are times when this process starts at 7 p.m. and has to be finished by 9 a.m. the next day with a player who's not in town. So there's a lot that goes into it that happens, after you read the announcement of what's going to happen.
It's such a true thing, and obviously right now here in the off season, every single team has 90 players, and that's why having a staff around you that knows what they're doing and you could trust, and having all that in place, it helps a lot. And one of the better run organizations, if you're able to have that, everything is able to run pretty smoothly. And I would say Philadelphia is near the top of that in the NFL. Another thing about the Eagles that I wanted to ask you about is under this front office with Howie Roseman, the Eagles have this reputation for thinking outside the box. And I think you're a very, very big part of that. I guess, how does that philosophy play out day by day. And I've heard Howie say we don't want to, we'll zig when everybody else is zagging. Like, how does that work within a front office that you guys are trying to think of something nobody else has?
Yeah, I think it's generally it starts with the mandate from leadership. So uh, starting at the top with Jeffrey down through Howie, there's a mandate to be innovative and leave no stone unturned. Um, and on a day-to-day basis, from my perspective, how that starts is being detailed and comprehensive in tracking what every other team's doing. And the more in the weeds you can be, the more situations you'll notice, the more scenarios that maybe don't apply yet, but could apply at some point in the future, you'll come up with. So it's noticing the details. And then the second part would be talking about it, discussions. This is not a solitary job. I think any idea we've ever had that's been interesting has come about as a result of brainstorming between multiple people. So for a long time, that was myself and Jake. Al Calabi has been a constant throughout the years on that. Now I work closely with Adam Berry, but you go back to Andrew Berry or Catherine Hickman, people we've had over the years where someone notices something and then we talk through scenarios and then we have the opportunity to make the case to Howie for this unique thing that we want to do. This is why it'll make sense for us. This is why it's not doesn't impact the player negatively, etc. And then we've always felt empowered to make the case for any idea being on the table.
I don't know how often you're checking social media or Twitter or whatever it is, but every single time a contract of significance is signed in Philadelphia, there is absolute outrage on how on earth are they doing this. And obviously, you are a very, very big part of that. For the job that you do and the ideas that you and the staff have and present to Howie, how great is it to have an owner like Jeffrey Lurie? And I guess what makes him different than maybe some other organization with the philosophies that he has when it comes to contract?
Mhm. I've only worked for one organization, so it's hard to compare between them. But like I said, the mandate from up top is very clear, and I think that creates a culture of feeling empowered to bring ideas forth. As far as the contracts that we sign or the transactions we execute, there's a couple different things happening at the same time. There's the deal with the player, but then there may be things that are separate to that acquisition that really more are impactful on our end, and we're in charge of thinking about both sides of that. So a lot of times these ideas I'm referencing have more to do with the team specific side that uh, are probably less noteworthy to the public or in the immediate term may seem less relevant to the change in the team, but that over the long term have an impact on what we're able to do, balancing planning and the ability to make further transactions.
Of all the great players in Philadelphia, many of them have gotten second, third contracts here, and they've been rewarded as early as a team could when they become eligible. Is there a negotiation or a specific transaction in your career so far that maybe you're just the most proud of it, either because maybe it was difficult and we figured it out, or because it just had such a big impact on the organization?
So I would say rather than a specific transaction, it would be like more of a type of transaction. So this would be a scenario where separately there's an acquisition happening, but based on the situation, there's a unique set of rules that we need to navigate. So, for an example, I'm thinking back to the 2019 time period where we're preparing for the end of the previous CBA, where in 2020 all of the salary cap rules were going to change, and that would have impacted what we were able to do and what all the contracts looked like in 2019 if we were going to stay aggressive. So there was a series of contracts where, separate from the deal that was being reached, we had all these other salary calculations that we were working on. And, we felt really proud that at the end of that, we had set ourselves up as well as possible for that 2020 scenario. Then they signed the CBA and ended up kind of being a moot point, but it did lead into other things that we've done since then. So those are the types of things that we're most proud of, when it may or may not end up actually mattering, but it puts us in the best position possible for different scenarios that may come about. And it's separate from the main highlight of the deal that's being talked about.
Executives like you, like a lot of, for example, coaches, they live in the moment. Executives have to live in the future a little bit because they have to have the roster, the construction, the budgeting, the cap, all these different things are on your mind. And you personally, like you handle salary cap planning, contract negotiations, working with agents, resource allocation strategy, the transaction, CBA compliance, among other roles as well. What is your philosophy when it comes to blending being aggressive and trying to win right now, but at the same time, maintaining that flexibility for the future because we obviously think about 2, 3 years down the road as well.
Yeah, I don't think that aggressiveness and flexibility necessarily have to be in opposition to each other. I think, uh, one of those things, we're trying to make Howie's job as easy as possible, supporting his decision making, getting him all the best information and strategic advice, so that he can make roster decisions. And within that context, the goal is to maintain as much flexibility to be consistently aggressive as possible. So fewer either ors, more yes and type situations. So that does require us thinking a few steps ahead and trying to solve problems before they exist, um, which does require putting yourself in the future and thinking back into what would we wish we have done 2 or 3 years ago, and trying to stay one step ahead, so we can continue to you know uh, acquire good players and be aggressive.
Hey guys, Ari here to tell you that we are so excited to be working with our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates. So they have created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy to use app. While you drive, they gather and analyze your data from your smartphone sensors. After a few weeks, you will get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving.
Yeah, Ari, the Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or just file a claim in minutes. You can get started today at root.com. And Ari, we got to talk about some things that are a little bit of root of the story. So we got a big one that's going on right now with Trey Hendrickson right now in the Cincinnati Bengals, a little bit of a holdout, a little bit of a chance there could be a trade coming up. What's the root of the story here?
Yeah, I feel like we're talking about this for a very, very long time, and it's had all the twists and turns that we could think of. And it's the same exact problem. The root of the problem has been guaranteed money, and the Bengals have not been offering guaranteed money into future years. They are one of the very, very few teams in the NFL that only do it for a very specific player, like a Joe Burrow, a Jamar Chase, and Trey Hendrickson believes he belongs in that category. The Bengals like, no, you don't belong in that category. And as a result, that's why we've seen a trade request. That's why we've seen a hold out. That's why we've seen a hold in. That's why we've seen the nasty comments. Nothing has changed all offseason long. And that's why the Bengals are willing to listen on a trade, but I don't expect the trade to happen because their asking price is a lot right now. And it's picks and it's players. And until something changes here, it's either Trey is going to have to take what they're offering or they're going to have to come to the middle of it here and one side gives up something, the other side gives something else, and eventually they get a deal done. I think the Bengals are a team that cannot go into this year without Trey Hendrickson. He knows his value, he knows his worth, he knows the pass rush market, and he is not moving off his stance of trying to get guaranteed money for future years so he could finish his career in Cincinnati.
Well, you can't be going out there on the field without Trey Hendrickson if you're the Bengals, and you can't be going out on the roads without good insurance, which is why our friends at Root Insurance have got you covered. Go visit root.com and learn how you can save for good driving.
I want to ask you just a bit of a general question here because every year, we go to the NFL Combine and there's many different people, whether it's young coaches or young scouts or young executives or guys who want to work in the cap department who are trying to find a job in the NFL. If you could give a piece of advice to somebody who wants to break into the NFL, whichever role it is, especially maybe even on the salary cap side, what would be that piece of advice you would give that person?
Yeah, I can definitely remember being in that situation, and I speak with a lot of students and young professionals who have those types of questions. There are 3 pieces of advice that I tend to give. One would be the number of opportunities are low, and they come about at irregular intervals. So it's hard to bank on there being an opportunity when it's convenient for you. So I think the best thing in the meantime is to build up your credentials and your experiences as much as possible, even if that's not in sports. So, if you work at in a high level business, in a sophisticated industry, that is the type of thing that is qualifying, regardless of whether it deals with the NFL. Then second, you have to make yourself known to the people who are hiring. So when there's an opportunity, they think of you and make you aware of that. So reaching out to people in positions like mine, not overdoing it, but asking for asking for advice, picking their brain, just letting them know that you're interested. And then the third thing would be following up on that with some demonstration of commitment and passion and ideas. In some sense, doing the job before you have the job, which basically what I was trying to do with the with the website type stuff. It doesn't have to be public. Sometimes people send research projects privately that they've done, but I think those are the 3 things: just building up credentials generally, reaching out, introducing yourself, and then somehow demonstrating specific passion for this industry.
As the famous story goes, Eagles GM Howie Roseman badly wanted to be involved in the NFL as a kid, and he would send his resume and what he could do to every single team nonstop. Finally got an answer from my current boss, Mike Tannenbaum. Eventually, they got to Joe Banner. That's how he got his chance with the Eagles, and the rest is history. So there are many stories out there like that, and it's some great advice there. Last couple of things here before I wrap this up. Obviously, I love asking a reflection question to people who come here on the show. And we went through your entire journey here, and you grew up an Eagles fan, and you saw those teams with Andy Reid and Donovan McNabb and Jeremiah Trotter and Terrell Owens and all of that. You ran an Eagles cap website, and now you're sitting in the senior VP chair for the team that you once rooted for. Do you ever take a step back? And what would, Bryce Johnston from EaglesCap.com think about himself today?
Yeah, all right. That's a great question. I think the younger version of myself would simultaneously be unfazed that this was the outcome because that was the vision or the goal. But importantly, I think he would have a major wake up call as to how much patience would be required to get there. If you think about from the first time I started putting these numbers together in spreadsheets to now, that's probably 9,000 days or so. And in most of those 9,000 days, nothing noteworthy happens and you don't make any tangible progress. So along the way, you have to just be consistent and be on top of it all the time and balance, I would say, the confidence that you're doing the right thing with the doubt that maybe you're not doing enough. And the combination of those things, can propel you along the path. But I think that the patience aspect of it would be would be the thing to convey to my younger self the most.
Last couple of things here before I wrap this up. We've mentioned before just all the roles that you have right now within the organization. Do you see yourself wanting to expand and do more within the organization? Do you see yourself maybe one day, I don't know, becoming a GM somewhere, or do you prefer the specialized role that you currently have within the organization?
Yeah, I think my current role, I wouldn't describe it as specialized because I think it touches on a lot of different areas of the operation. So, for example, I don't evaluate players on film, but I work very closely with our scouts and use all the information that they generate in analysis. Similar for analytics, or I don't have a medical degree, but I work closely with our athletic trainers because contracts and health have a significant overlap. So I think it's less about it being specialized. I do feel like I touch on a lot of different areas, but to the main part of your question, if you only looked at people who I currently work with or have in the past, there are more great candidates for those types of jobs than there are opportunities. So given that dynamic, I think the best course of action is to just try to control what I can control and, contribute to the team as much as I can, and then let it play out from there.
I love it, and we'll definitely be keeping a very close eye on everybody there in that tremendous Eagle front office as all of you continue to climb up the front office ladder. The last question that I ask every single guest who comes on the show, and Bryce, I really appreciate the time you've given us here so far today. This is the NFL Spotlight Show. We love spotlighting people around the NFL who deserve more recognition. Like me and you both know, football is the ultimate team sport. There's people throughout the organization who help push to the common goal. You could pick a player, coach, executive who is somebody in the NFL who should be sitting in this seat here in the future.
So I gravitate in that answer towards colleagues of mine, and I touched earlier on the logistical operation and coordination that goes into all of our transactions here. And a lot of times, scouts will receive recognition, interviews, and that sort of thing. But um, someone here who I think is key to making all the transactions happen is Katie David, our chief of staff for football operations. So you read the tweet. We've signed player X, we've traded for player Y. Okay, what happens then? Well, she's the one who makes that happen. So every player who comes here starts their career onboarded through Katie, and she takes the heavy lift of coordinating all the departments I've referenced and making it happen, as well as just making things work in the office. So she's been here for a very long time, and I think is kind of exemplifies the behind the scenes work that makes our operation here successful.
I mean, Katie, it's a perfect answer, and that is exactly the type of people that we're trying to get here on the show. It's people who deserve more recognition for making the entire operation go, and there are so many people within an organization that help that happen, and the Eagles have so many of them. Katie's one, you're another, and it's we're definitely going to get to work on trying to get more of those type of people here on the show every single Tuesday. But Bryce, I want to thank you for coming on over here and sharing your career path, the journey, how it's taken you to where you are today. There are many people who are listening to this show who are trying to find a way into the NFL. And if they hear your story and just hear how you started in all of this and being a fan and getting to where you are today, it will motivate them to try to push forward and try to do something similar. So thanks so much for coming on. Best of luck this season. And week one, opening night in Philadelphia, the link will be here soon enough.
Yep, that'll be fun. Then that's great to hear. I hope that's the case. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on. This was fun.
Special thanks to Bryce Johnston for being our spotlight guest of the week. And what a cool story. I mean, we have so many different guests that we've had here on the show, players, coaches, executives. Everybody has a different path to getting to where they are. But to have somebody who was so dedicated to the Philadelphia Eagles, who loved them as a kid growing up, who loved the business side of football, who literally had a website that was the only website when it came to salary cap and the Philadelphia Eagles specifically, and eventually started working with a previous guest here on the show and Jason Fitzgerald of overthecap.com. And that turns into a career with the team he always loved. That is so awesome. And Bryce, like I said, is such an important part of that front office, somebody who many people don't know about, but many people should know about. And he's a name that I think will be getting way more attention here in the coming years when it comes to front office hires around the NFL. I think that's a real thing because we know this. Many people get poached out of that Eagles front office. Howie loves him. He's very important there, but everyone is keeping a close eye on everybody in that front office, and that will probably include Bryce as well because he is brilliant at what he does. So special thanks to him for coming on the show here this week. For all of you who have been watching NFL Spotlight the last 2 weeks plus, we have been doing a team-by-team preview of every single team. We've been joined by B reporters from the team, guys who cover the team day in and day out, or boots on the ground, know the players, know the team better than anybody. They have been joining us. We will continue that over here the rest of the week. We had the Carolina Panthers on Monday. Of course, we had the interview today. And then we're going to have the rest of the week. We have the Bears coming up. We have the Chargers coming up. We have the Falcons coming up. We have a bunch of teams here coming up in the coming days, leading up to the opening game on September 4th between the Eagles and Cowboys. So if we have not done your team yet, it's coming. Don't get too crazy about it. We're going to get to you guys. And of course, make sure you are subscribed right here on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, whichever way you listen to us. It is greatly appreciated. And we will continue to pump out all the great content here on the show. We will see all of you here tomorrow morning.